The human mind is a fragile thing, easily lured by curiosity and easily trapped by greed. In the late summer of 1939, 10 distinct individuals, completely unknown to one another, received a letter. It was written on elegant stationery, signed by a mysterious billionaire named UN Owen. For some, it was an invitation to a lavish weekend party. For others, it was an offer of employment, promising a high salary on a remote paradise. Among them was Justice Wargrave, a retired, cold-hearted judge whose eyes had seen too much human wickedness. There was Vera Claythorne, a young, quiet schoolmistress looking to escape a dark memory of her past. There was Captain Philip Lombard, a ruthless soldier of fortune who carried a loaded revolver and cared for nothing but survival. Alongside them stood a high-ranking military general, a deeply religious old woman, a wealthy young playboy named Anthony Marston, a nervous doctor, a suspicious detective, and 2 newly hired house servants, Thomas and Ethel Rogers. 10 strangers, 10 hidden pasts, 10 people traveling toward Devon, England, completely unaware that they were stepping into the jaws of a calculated monster. As they boarded a small, vintage wooden boat at the foggy harbor, none of them questioned the identity of their host. The promise of the island was far too powerful to resist. The boat cut through the cold, choppy Atlantic waves. In the distance, rising from the gray ocean like a jagged tooth, was Soldier Island. It was a massive, barren rock, isolated from the mainland, completely cut off from civilization. Atop the highest cliff of the island stood the mansion. It was not an old Gothic castle, but a modern, cold, and brilliant piece of architecture. Its giant glass windows stared down at the approaching boat like lifeless eyes. As the guests stepped onto the slippery stone dock, a heavy, suffocating sense of dread filled the damp air.
The wind howled through the rocks, whispering a warning that none of them chose to hear. Once the last suitcase was brought inside, the boatman turned his vessel around and departed. The sound of the engine slowly faded into the distance. The guests stood on the shore, watching their only connection to the outside world disappear. They were officially trapped. Inside, the mansion was breathtakingly luxurious, yet terrifyingly quiet. The butler, Mr. Rogers, and his pale, shaken wife greeted the guests, informing them that the host, Mr. UN Owen, had been delayed and would not arrive until the following day. Each guest was shown to their private, magnificent room, but as they unpacked, a strange detail caught their attention. Hanging on the wall of every bedroom, framed in heavy black wood, was an old, chilling children's nursery rhyme. It spoke of 10 little soldier boys who went out to dine, and how they died one by one, until there were none. As night fell, a violent storm began to brew outside, trapping the guests deeper within the modern fortress. The dining room was prepared with absolute perfection. Soft candlelight flickered against silver plates and expensive crystal glasses. In the center of the grand, polished wooden table sat a bizarre centerpiece, 10 small, beautifully crafted porcelain soldier figurines standing in a perfect, silent circle. Good food and expensive wine slowly began to ease the tension in the room. Anthony Marston, the wealthy young playboy, laughed loudly, raising his glass to the beauty of the island. The judge spoke softly of past cases, and the doctor drank to calm his racing pulse. For a brief moment, it felt like a normal, high society gathering. The nightmare was masked by luxury, but as dinner concluded and the guests moved into the drawing room for coffee, the atmosphere shattered. At exactly 9 o'clock, a sudden, unnatural silence fell upon the house, and then a voice began to speak. It was not a human voice from within the room. It was loud, booming, and completely devoid of emotion. It sounded like a cold judge delivering a final verdict from the shadows. The voice echoed off the walls, penetrating the very souls of the 10 people inside. It began to read a list. One by one, it called out every single person in the room by their full name, and with every name, it labeled a horrific accusation. Edward George Wargrave, the voice boomed, that you did, on the 10th day of June, murder Edward Seaton. Vera Elizabeth Claytorne, that you did drown a young boy named Cyril Hamilton. Philip Lombard, that you did abandon 21 men of an African tribe to starve to death in the wilderness. The voice continued, exposing the deepest, darkest secrets of all 10 individuals. It accused them of cold-blooded murders, crimes committed in secret, sins that the law could never prove, deaths that had gone unpunished by society. When the voice finally stopped, a terrifying silence returned. Mrs. Rogers screamed violently and collapsed to the floor in a dead faint. Captain Lombard rushed behind the curtain and discovered a hidden, spinning vinyl record on a gramophone player. It was a pre-recorded trap. Someone had gathered them here to face their past. Panic erupted. Who was UN Owen? If you look closely at the name, UN Owen sounds exactly like unknown, desperate to regain control. Justice Wargrave suggested that they must leave the island immediately, but with the storm raging and the boat gone, there was no escape. They were prisoners of an invisible executioner. To break the suffocating terror, young Anthony Marston sneered. "It's a psychological game," he muttered, refusing to show fear. He walked to the side table, poured himself a fresh glass of whiskey, and raised it high. To the unknown host, he toasted and took a deep, aggressive sip. Instantly, Marston's eyes widened in sudden, absolute shock. His hands flew to his throat. He gasped for air, his face turning a sickening shade of purple. He choked violently, suffocating on nothing. The heavy crystal glass slipped from his fingers, shuddering loudly on the floor as the amber liquid spilled across the carpet like fresh blood. With a heavy thud, Marston collapsed face first onto the table, motionless. The doctor rushed forward, checking the young man's pulse. He looked up, his face pale with horror. "He's dead. Poisoned." Absolute terror gripped the room. The first soldier had fallen, exactly like the first line of the nursery rhyme on the wall. And as the butler, trembling with fear, looked back at the grand dining table, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Where 10 porcelain figurines had stood just moments ago, there were now only 9. One of them lay shattered into tiny pieces on the floor. The countdown had begun, and no one was safe.
1 down, 9 to go. Who will survive? Follow now and turn on notifications so you don't miss episode 2.